Hey everybody, welcome back to the Coach's Corner. As always, I'm Clayton here with my good friend.
Justin Crucial.
We're going to preview some games for you of the upcoming week and go over kind of some X's and O's of what we saw that led to the outcome of the results from the previous week. Justin, we're on to week 8 of the NFL, man. How do you feel about that?
Well, this week we're going to go through a couple games. One of them was a battle of unbeatens. Obviously, in that matchup, there'll be one team that comes out victorious, and the other, one-loss team still has everything, in front of them to play for. But so far, I think that you're really starting to see how legit some of the teams are. And in the case of the NFC West, you're starting to see, one of those teams isn't going to, be making the playoffs. So, there's a chance that one of them doesn't, but those are four really good teams, and I think last week really proved that, and I think you'll continue to see it this week as well.
Well, let's just dive right on in. You talked about the battle of the unbeatens. That's the Steelers and the Titans who played each other last week. What did you see from that one?
Really, I think we kind of saw two teams that that I don't think the Steelers really won many games in dominating fashion. And I mean, I think you could argue that the Titans haven't either, so you're starting to see which of the undefeated teams was, really legit. And I think that the Steelers did an excellent job, specifically Big Ben. He was able to get the ball out to his playmakers like Smith-Schuster and Johnson. Both of them, I believe, had 8 or 9 plus catches and 80 plus yards. And Johnson, found the end zone twice. But in addition to that, they were also able to get James Conner the football. I think he had over 110 yards of all-purpose yards, which kind of really shows that he's kind of a dual threat running back with regards to being able to catch the ball and obviously run the ball. Very, very tough. And I think the last key to that game really was, from the Steelers' standpoint, was the play of their special teams. Their special teams played great. Boswell played great, and the punting was fantastic. They never really gave the Titans very good field position, and they were able to. The Titans weren't able to get off the field defensively on third down, and the red zone defense was pretty bad. I think that just the first half alone, I think you ended up seeing the Titans or the Steelers score on like 3 of their 4 red zone possessions, like touchdowns or just score in general in the red zone. And they were like 8 of 9 on third down. And then lastly, the Titans just couldn't get Derrick Henry going. And in order for them to really win games like they did last year and early this season, I mean, Derrick Henry has to get going early and often, and that helps Ryan Tannehill out.
Yeah, no, I agree with all the things that you put forward there, especially the special teams play. Kind of flipping a little bit, not diverting, but just to bring it up. You saw how important special teams could play with that Rams and Bears game. I mean, Hecker was hitting 60-yard punts consistently and just flipping the field. Whenever you've got a punter that can consistently down balls deep in the territory, that just puts stress on the offense to move the ball. So, yeah, very good point of an underrated third of the game, right? Football, we always tell people, is 3 parts. It's offense and defense is what everybody wants to talk about, but it's also special teams. Arguably can impact the game in the most crucial times. How many times have we seen a kicker, Bears fans, miss a game winner, right?
As a Vikings fan, too, I mean, 98, and then we got the old Blair Walsh wide left, wide right. It was not a fun time.
Ooh, yeah. So actually staying in the Steelers division, we had a matchup of the Bengals and the Browns. That was one that I kept my eye on. We saw earlier in the season, or it was early on in Joe Burrow's career, and he put up a heck of a fight with the Browns. That was kind of the game that got the Browns going on the winning streak, that catapulted them up the rankings and the power rankings. Really gave them the confidence that, hey, we could win tight games, or we could shoot it out if we have to. We saw Odell Beckham tear his ACL off in Baker Mayfield interception as he's trying to make the tackle. But surprisingly, more than anything, Baker rebounded, and he ended up throwing for 5 touchdowns in that one. Started 0 for 5 with an interception.
Yeah, that first quarter was ugly.
Yeah, and to come back, finishing 22 of 28, very efficient numbers, throwing 5 touchdowns, including the game winner, a little back shoulder ball to Rashard Higgins. in the end zone with 20 seconds left to play. I mean, man, I don't know what to think about Baker Mayfield, honestly, because one week, in a choice matchup, he just fails to deliver. But then it's like whenever the cards are stacked against him, that's when he delivers. He may just prove to be an enigmatic player his whole career. I don't know how long the Browns decide that they want to ride that roller coaster with him, but he's shown that on his game, just like this last Sunday, he's capable of delivering in big moments and making all the big plays, which is what you need. And speaking of a quarterback that can make all the big plays and stick his nose in there where it belongs, Joe Burrow, man, he's proved that he was worthy of that number one selection. He's showing that he's going to be around in this league for a long time. Threw for another 400-yard game, had 4 touchdowns, 3 passing, 1 rushing, did throw an interception, but this Browns defense is pretty good. Joe Burrow, man, what are you seeing from him?
I think that hire that LSU made with Joe Brady really, really helped not only that LSU team, but more specifically, I think it really helped Joe Burrow. I think that having a pro coach kind of go to the college ranks and as the passing game coordinator, kind of teaching a lot of the pro concepts and whatnot really helped. I mean, yeah, LSU was stacked with talent, but I think that you're really starting to see that Joe Burrow can play in this league. Just needs a little bit more pieces around him. But I mean, going back to the point with Baker Mayfield, he was able to do all this without Odell Beckham, but I mean, I think you're going to have to start seeing Higgins and Donovan Peoples-Jones step up, and I think that they're going to need to see Njoku come, play better football to kind of supplement because you can't really replace Odell, but I think with those 3 guys that I mentioned, plus getting Chubb back, will really help Baker out a lot. I think that Hooper's played good football, but if I know Kevin Stefanski just from the years he spent in Minnesota, if he can get 2 tight ends on the field, I guess Harrison Bryant's also playing good football, but even if they can get 3 tight ends on the field, the Vikings did it a lot when he was in Minnesota, which I think he's going to want to do. I think the Browns will be fine. I don't think they'll win the division, but I think for sure, I know it's the Browns, knock on wood here, but I think that they can and will make the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, I think the most exciting part if you're a Browns fan is you're seeing consistent production 2 years in a row. You're actually seeing growth from the team. You're seeing growth from your quarterback, which is what you wanted to see in year 3 from Baker. A lot of people said this is a make or break year for him, and he's definitely shown that he's grown each year, which is all you can hope for from a quarterback, especially a young guy.
I don't think this year's a make or break deal for Baker. I think next year is, because he's going to have the 5th-year option, but a lot of coaches say that the biggest growth the quarterback, or any player, but specifically a quarterback, will make in a system, not just being in the league, but just when you have an offensive coordinator or any sort of play calling change, it's the 2nd year, because you're getting way more comfortable in the system. You've been, together with that person for, essentially 2 off seasons at that point. And with the consistency I think the Browns are going to have from a personnel standpoint, I really think, you're going to see him play pretty good, roller coaster-like, but overall pretty good football this year. I think, the better football for Baker will be next year.
I think that's a good point you made, that the growth is in the 2nd year of the system, because you've got 2 off seasons to work with the coach. Baker hasn't had a consistent system to be in, so this will be the first off season, assuming everybody stays. You can never say something for certain in the NFL, but assuming everything stays the way it's going into next year, the reason I highlighted the 3rd year is they always say, okay, so the first year the rookie comes out and you kind of see what you have in them. The 2nd year, you normally see the rookie quarterback struggle, because now there's a year of film on them, and now defenses can kind of prepare and they know what's good or not. 3rd year is you kind of depend and you kind of see how he's going to react to all the adjustments made prior. How is he tweaking his game to now beat the defenses? So that's why sometimes if somebody out there didn't know, that's why you get the highlighted 3rd year, is how have they rebounded? How have they tweaked their game? What did they go back in the offseason to work on to combat those defensive scheming that all the coaches in the league have been doing against them?
Well, yeah, and going to just my point, the 2nd year in the system, I mean, you want to look at, a quarterback and head coaching tandem that's having a pretty good second year and a very successful first year. I mean, look at Matt LaFleur and Aaron Rodgers in Green Bay. I mean, they 13-3 last year, NFC Championship game. That's really good, but now you're starting to see. I mean, outside of their loss, like they were just firing on all cylinders, just constantly.
Right, absolutely. Well, then looks like you had the Bears versus the Rams highlighted as well. What'd you see from that one?
The Bears could not get their running game going, and I think that's the biggest thing that they can do to help Nick Foles. There are parts of their defense that excel really well, but there are also parts of their defense that they need to work on. They're not a complete team yet. I do think that they're at the very least in the hunt for the playoffs. I mean, I think I'm not like, I know going into this week they were, I think, top of the NFC North. So there's a solid chance that they're at the very least in the hunt for the playoffs, but they're going to need to run the football better. They weren't able to get David Montgomery going, and that might just be more, accredited to the Rams front. Led by obviously Aaron Donald, arguably one of the best players in the NFL. But also Henderson and Brown were able to just kind of gash the Bears defense, and they really proved they were a good 1-2 punch. And the real difference maker for Jared Goff in the passing game wasn't necessarily Cooper Kupp. It was kind of him, maybe more as a decoy, but Robert Woods really made a lot of chunk plays that helped the Rams get the win. And I think it might have been one of Matt Nagy's worst games, because they were in a position a little bit towards the end, but it was too little too late. I think that they should have ran a little bit more hurry up to kind of like the Rams did. The Rams ran hurry up to try to avoid substitutions on the Bears defense and to tire out guys on the field like Khalil Mack. And I think that the Bears could have done that to maybe try to slow down Aaron Donald and that defensive front a little bit, but for whatever reason they didn't. I think there was a moment in the game where Nagy probably should have called a timeout to attempt kind of a field goal before halftime, but didn't. And so I think that it was also partially it just wasn't Nagy's best game, and every dog has their day. You know what I mean? Like, and it just wasn't Matt Nagy's during the Rams game.
Yeah, I don't know how long Matt Nagy can keep displacing the blame whenever it's directly. He's responsible for the play calling. He's the one making these decisions. It's not Nick Foles. It's not the offensive line. It's not David Montgomery. It's not Allen Robinson. It's not Ryan Pace up top at the top of the food chain. It's Matt Nagy. And Matt Nagy every day says the offense is the problem. Well, that starts with the offensive play calling, okay? And that starts with the offensive coordinator. So they need to get in a room together. They need to figure out how to execute better or what to scheme better, because it seems like we saw whenever the Bears went 12-4, they had this awesome system where nobody could know exactly what he was going to call. He had all these nice little gimmicky plays, but much like we've seen from Sean Payton sometimes, we're just getting too cute with it. We're seeing we had a 4th and 1 on a drive that you nearly needed to convert, and you saw a flip to Cordero Patterson to the short side of the field, not even to the wide side to maybe let him run outside using speed, get the edge, but to the short side of the field. Matt Nagy's just getting way too cute, and he's going up to the press conferences and displacing the blame on everybody but himself. At the end of the day, he's really got to look in the mirror and just accept the blame for himself and say, I've got to do a better job getting plays in there.
I like the idea of getting the ball into Cordero Patterson's hands. He's a playmaker. He nicknamed himself Flashy because he likes to make flash plays, but just the design and like you said, the call to the short side of the field. I don't know if it was trying to be a tendency breaker. Like, I don't know kind of a whole lot of the Bears' tendencies, and if maybe they run to the wide side of the field a lot or what went into that. I'm sure that Matt Nagy just didn't pick a play on his play call sheet and be like, boom, run this. But I agree. Like, maybe it would have been better to try to throw a bubble, or obviously just some way of getting Cordero in space, or Allen Robinson. He's kind of your go-to guy, or one of your gazillion tight ends. But I mean, it is what it is. I just think that, like I said, every dog has its day, and it wasn't Matt Nagy's night, and I think because they weren't able to get the run game going, Foles just never got in a rhythm. And I think he's really a rhythm QB. That whole playoff run he had in Philadelphia that everyone talks about, Frank Reich, John DeFilippo, and Doug Peterson did an excellent job finding ways to get Foles in rhythm early. Because when he's hot, he's hot. I mean, that like I said, that entire playoff run, I mean, he looked pretty darn good.
Right, and it's not necessarily maybe Foles' fault, but something that they're losing with Foles that they had in Trubisky is this offensive line. Yeah, exactly. This offensive line was bad with Trubisky. It's bad with Foles, right? I mean, Nick Foles reportedly said to Brian Grease that he doesn't have enough time to execute the plays that Nagy's sending into the headset. Well, at least with Trubisky, he could escape the pocket, make something happen. Yeah. And we've seen that happen. So for them to watch Nick Foles take sack after sack and look like he has no situational awareness, when you see the corners of the safeties walk down into the box, and it's evidently that they're pinning their ears back, coming after, and he just stands there and takes it. That's really disheartening to see. So if you're not looking directly to put the blame on Matt Nagy, you really got to look at Nick Foles and say, what's going on here? You don't look like the same guy that, like you said, he does get hot, he does play good football, but the consistency is killer. I mean, it's stalling drives.
I know what play Brett Favre would have called in that cover zero look. Razor, I think it was 98 Razor. He talks about in his football life documentary, All Week in the Hotel. He was watching Joe Montana, because it's the same scheme, West Coast offense. Checking to Razor. I think it might have been 98 Razor or something like that. And it was just it was that infamous touchdown to who was it? The first touchdown of the game against the Patriots that that Favre won. But yeah, I don't know if they had any plays like that in the game, but they sure could have used them.
Absolutely.
So you had the Seahawks and Cardinals too?
I did. That game I had circled just because I was not so much for Seahawks. We know who they are this season. We know who they have been in the past.
But the Cardinals.
The Cardinals, we've seen both good football and bad football from them. We've seen them squeak by bad teams. We've seen them compete with good teams. This was a case that we saw them compete with some good teams. Okay, we saw them compete with the undefeated Seahawks, previously undefeated until after this game. They went step for step. They're actually down by 10 with 3 minutes left. Kyler Murray takes it to overtime, gets a chance in overtime, sets him up to win the game. Zane Gonzalez misses the field goal. We get Isaiah Simmons on the field, and he gets in a big play, gets an interception. They've been kind of in question because they haven't found a way to get him on the field. Well, they finally get him on the field. He makes a big-time interception off Russell Wilson over the middle, returns it. Kyler Murray sets him up into field goal range. They win the game. I think you're just going to see this. It's just that style of football. Some teams are just going to match up better with what the Cardinals want to do. They're going to be able to take away some of the deep stuff to DeAndre Hopkins. We've seen some games where he doesn't get involved until either late or he takes something small for big gain. But I think that's just part of the air raid that Cliff Kingsbury likes to bring. But I will say this is a huge step for the Arizona Cardinals as a team. We saw that Kyler Murray, this wasn't just a garbage time stats game. This wasn't a pointless game. This was a big-time divisional game to try to keep them alive because, like we mentioned earlier, somebody in this division isn't making the playoffs. This is a good division. The 49ers are playing well. The Rams are playing well. Just mentioned them thumping the Bears. Seahawks were undefeated, obviously. Where did the Cardinals rank in that? Are they at the bottom or are they at the top, right? So they were trying to make their statement, and they did. They said, hey, we're just as good as the other three teams in this division, and we should be considered. So I was very impressed just all around with the execution, the toughness, the willingness to finally make a statement and say, okay, we're not the Cardinals of old. We're not the Cardinals from St. Louis that sucked every year. We're not the Cardinals with Josh Rosen that only won 2 football games or 3 football games. We're a brand new Cardinals, and we're going to start winning football games, and we're going to go to the playoffs. And that's why I had it circled. I thought that they answered all those questions. I thought they made those statements.
Do you think that Christian Kirk is secretly Kyler Murray's number 2 receiver?
I don't think that's a secret.
After 2 weeks, I mean, I like Andy Isabella. I just think there's still a lot of development with him. And obviously, Larry Fitzgerald's Larry Fitzgerald. But I really think that the biggest, the guy that improved the most from last year to this year on that team might be Christian Kirk, because they're finding ways to give him the ball. Obviously, catching the ball, but also on the ground with like some jet sweeps and whatnot.
It's important to remember Christian Kirk was hurt a lot last year too, so we're
Mm-hmm.
finally seeing what an explosive Christian Kirk could do. And like I said, I don't think that's a secret. I think he's definitely the second guy. Oh, excuse me. I think Hopkins obviously coming in hurts him, but I think he was the number one guy before Hopkins got there.
That was such a
Andy
train
Isabella
robbery.
and Larry Fitz, they're kind of operating on their own. They're kind of operating as the rotational wide receiver 3. So, that's how I feel about it. Christian Kirk has come and made an impact ever since his rookie year. So, yeah, I think he's taken a big stride. I think he loves this offense, and it gets him in positions to make plays.
Yeah. Speaking of division games, going into our previews, looks like one of your games you're previewing is the Falcons and Panthers. What are you kind of seeing from that game? What are you expecting?
So what I'm seeing big time from that is we're seeing the Falcons play for their jobs. These are auditions every week now. This isn't competing to win this year. This is competing for Arthur Blank. Please keep me on this team going forward.
Or keep me in the NFL.
Right. That starts with Matt Ryan. Matt Ryan has not had a good year. You look at the stats and you see that maybe they tell a different story, but a lot of those are empty garbage time stats where they're just getting blown out and they're just trying to make something happen. We've seen Julio Jones make an immediate impact. I think it's hilarious because I say on the East West Fantasy Show all the time that Matt Ryan forgets Julio Jones is there. I don't know if Julio Jones slept with Matt Ryan's wife or something to make him hate him as much as he does in the red zone, but something happened, and now all of a sudden Matt Ryan has rekindled that relationship with Julio Jones.
When Arthur Blank's writing out those game checks, I'm sure that he's constantly texting Matt Ryan, "Hey, I'm paying this guy a lot of money to catch footballs." Like,
yeah, and it's not that Ridley is bad or anything. It's just that Julio is, a generational talent. Exactly. So it's very confusing when they do get to the red zone and they're losing a game by 3 points. They're losing a game by 5-6 points, and you go, if only there was a guy that could catch touchdowns on your team, Matt Ryan. Well, now we've seen him really get targeted here as of late. So I'm hoping to see that connection continue, because if it doesn't, I'm really afraid they're just going to trade Julio to a contender and maybe finish the year with Matt Ryan and try to draft Matt Ryan's replacement going forward, because, they've got a young guy in Calvin Ridley, but why continue to pay an aging Julio Jones?
Yeah, and I think that also speaks to the point, like, I think that they're really playing for their jobs, because if the Falcons wanted to tank, they could. And it starts with trading Julio Jones for cap reasons, but also if you're really going to rebuild, you could get still a lot out of Julio Jones. Same could be said for Matt Ryan. He does have a pretty big contract, and if you're tanking, you might as well play the backup. You might as well play Matt Schaub. And it's a way to clear more cap space. But, it's the NFL. They're professionals. They're playing with some pride. So I agree with you that and I also think that having Raheem Morris as your interim is huge. And why is that? Because he's been a head coach before, but also, he wants the job, so he's coaching for that job, so, and I think that the Falcons have a great deal of respect for Raheem. And so that's why I think that you're going to continue to see them, even if they don't win a whole lot of games. They're going to be in, I think, every game, because they certainly have the talent offensively and defensively. Like, for once their defense is healthy. Last year they had Jones hurt, they had Neal hurt, the list went on and on and on. Now I know the DBs kind of have suffered a little bit from injuries, but overall they're pretty healthy.
Right, exactly. And I love that point you made about Raheem Morris coaching for his job. Another underrated aspect of the game that gets overlooked is when you have a coach fired in midseason, it's not the players playing for their jobs now. It's the coaches coaching for their jobs. That's an audition for them as well. And that was a great point you made.
Yeah. Speaking of a divisional game, I'm kind of looking at the Vikings Packers, and yeah, I'm a Vikings fan. Okay, so selfishly you can say that I'm looking at it from here, but more than that, how much pride are the Vikings going to play with? I mean, I know there's been some kind of speculation that maybe Mike Zimmer's lost the locker room. I think this is going to be one of those games where you can kind of dictate that. And I'm not saying if the Vikings lose that, Mike Zimmer lost the locker room. It's how you play. If we get the type of effort that we got against the Falcons, but if you get the type of effort that they got from the Seahawks, completely different story. And I think that getting Dalvin Cook back's you're gonna see a night and day difference. I think Justin Jefferson's going to have a big game because I think that, the game plan is still going to be to make sure that, Adam Thielen's kind of neutralized. And while trying to neutralize Adam Thielen, you want guys in the box to stop Dalvin Cook. So you're going to have a lot of one-on-ones to Jefferson. Let's say they want to shut down Jefferson. Well, you're going to have a lot of one-on-ones on Adam Thielen. So I kind of am expecting Jefferson to have, a pretty big game. But defensively, how healthy are we coming out of the bye? How much of the mistakes that were made were fixed during the bye? Because you kind of have extra time to kind of reflect, one, to get healthy first and foremost, but two, to kind of reflect like what went well through these first, however many weeks, what can we improve upon? And I think that that the pass rush obviously can help the young DBs out, but also, are they playing out of position in any way? Like, is one coverage, do certain corners play a certain coverage better than than ones that were being called?
Mm-hmm. And looking at that, if they were to manage to pick off the Packers, that would blow this division open. That would give them the confidence going forward for the rest of their schedule to say, hey, we can beat anybody. We just beat the freaking Packers. And it would also put them in that very competitive playoff hunt in the NFC. There's a lot of good NFC teams fighting for those bottom. But
even with the extra wild card team, I mean, there's still going to be good teams that are sitting at home.
Exactly. I mean, we just mentioned the NFC West. The NFC North has. I think the Vikings are just a team that's underperformed for what's on the talented roster.
I think the
Lions
are 3-3, by the way.
Talented division there. Obviously, the NFC East is bad, but you look at the NFC South. That's another talented division. I mean, you've got three divisions there where 3 out of the 4 teams are highly competitive for these playoff spots.
Well, you could potentially see all 4 teams from the NFC West in the playoffs, but I mean that means that you look at the NFC South. I mean that just I think this year in the NFC is one of the most important years to win your division, because if you win your division, you're not leaving any doubt. I mean, you get the home game. If we don't have a whole lot of fans, I think it's starting to prove that home field advantage really isn't home field advantage anymore. But I mean, sleeping in your own bed is probably the best home field advantage there is this year. But most importantly, you're ensuring your spot in the playoffs. I mean, that's why if you're even the NFC East, I mean, every team's essentially still in the hunt to win that division.
Yeah, absolutely. Even literally every team. I mean, it's not like one's pulling away from the other.
The Giants and Washington football team can both still technically make the playoffs. I mean,
we've seen crazy things happen in that division. It happens every year. That's why there's never a repeat winner in the NFC East. It's always something wacky. But keeping this trend rolling of divisional rivals, you also like the 49ers Seahawks game coming up.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing we see here is kind of going back to kind of what I said in the Titans and Steelers game is, but more importantly, this game, because it's a divisional game, was how legit are both these teams. I think it's huge for playoff implications and kind of just division standings between the 49ers and Seahawks. I mean, in short, how did the Seahawks react to a loss? You know, because they didn't play well against the Vikings on Sunday night. We've talked about that before. And then they get beat after, because I believe last week they had their bye, or I guess the week before. But you know, they played on last week against the Cardinals, and you know, they put up a lot of points. You know, they put up some yards, but you know, they didn't really play well. And I think it's the defense. You know, I mean, you've seen Russell Wilson and the offense do all these incredible things, but yet the defense hasn't been able to stop anybody. I mean, they haven't. And so I think that's one of the reasons why they added Carlos Dunlap to kind of give him some edge help.
Right.
I just think they were banking on Jadeveon Clowney coming back this coming year, and he didn't. So they haven't really had any sort of edge rush. So it just speaks volumes to their linebackers, for one. I mean, they might have one of the best linebacking cores in the league, but also just their DB play. I know a lot of people are saying, oh, they're starting to build back the Legion of Boom. Now, I hold the horses on that for right now. But I do think that it does speak volumes to their DBs that they have been able to win games. But just, I mean, against the Cardinals, it was just not their day. And for the 49ers, you know, can you take the momentum of going into New England, which it's not exactly the same New England team of years past, but it's still Bill Belichick. It's still his defense. His defense is exactly. His baby. And you ran all over them. I mean, Wilson had a career game. I mean, I think there are probably people during the game that were like, I need to pick up this guy for next week. But it's you know, come to be expected from a Shanahan system that it doesn't matter really who the running back is. The system's just really running back friendly. I think that you were starting to see Garoppolo finally kind of getting back into form, but I wonder how much of that's just you're in New England, okay? Like, they traded you for a second round pick. Okay, you were supposed to be the successor to Tom Brady. So I mean, some players perform well against their former teams, other players don't. Obviously, you know, Jimmy G had a good game.
Yeah, no, great points, excellent points. I think with the limited passing attack that they do have, this will be a good break-in week for Carlos Dunlap to come in and kind of get his feet wet under the Seahawks system, because he's not going to be utilized in the same manner he would be if they played the Cardinals again this week. Just trying to tee off and trying to stunt and get free. So I think this is a good week just for Dunlap to play a team that really tries to establish the run. So
because of COVID rules, he probably won't even be able to play this week, unfortunately.
Oh, with the
quarantine. With COVID rules, I think that like they have to. I think there's like a 6-day period, so he won't be able to play. But I think regardless, I mean, yeah, it would be huge to have him this game, but the rest of the season that they needed somebody. And you know, they got Carlos Dunlap pretty cheap. They ended up trading guard. I think it was BJ Finney, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct.
And a seventh
rounder. Yeah.
So I mean,
got him cheap.
To get an edge rusher that, you know, I don't think he's been playing his best football, but you know, I still think there's definitely tread left on the tires.
Oh, I'd agree.
And speaking of playoff implications, you had the Saints and Bears.
Yeah, I think this is a massive game for the Bears on their schedule. Not so much of a big deal for the Saints, and here's why I say that. The Saints, we know, are high-powered. We know that the roster is talented, and we've seen them squeak into the playoffs before. This is a very savvy group of veterans that whenever it comes down to, okay, guys, we got to buckle down, we got to win. Okay, they're gonna have a chance down the road. The Bears, on the other hand, we're talking about winning the division to make the playoffs. I think the Bears absolutely have to win the division to make the playoffs.
Oh.
I mean, I just don't think I don't think we're going to see consistent enough play throughout the year from them with the way the change has to be with Matt Nagy. Matt Nagy has to call plays better, and Foles has to play better. Okay, I think this is a big statement game for them. Can Foles come out and duel with the Saints like he did whenever he was with the Philadelphia Eagles and give them all they want in a football game? Can the Saints come out and without Michael Thomas potentially and without a couple of their other defenders that have gone down due to injury this week.
And Emmanuel Sanders was on the COVID list.
Emmanuel Sanders, they may not get him back. I knew he was out last week, but what we're seeing from the Saints too, though, previewing them, is it's something scary the past 2 weeks. I've said it before. I've mentioned it on the fantasy show. I've mentioned it on here with you. Sean Payton had to let Drew Brees be Drew Brees and open it up and get some quick completions, read the defense, get in rhythm, and say, this is exactly what they're doing, and I'm good for the rest of the game. We're seeing that the past 2 weeks now, even without a plethora of weapons. Drew Brees is dissecting defenses again. He's looking sharp. If this is the game plan the Saints use going forward instead of an I formation, give Latavius Murray 15 to 16 carries a game, along with Alvin Kamara's 15 to 16 carries a game, where they're just the primary running team, that Saints team could be beaten. The Saints team that can't be beaten is when you let Drew Brees spread it out. Okay, and that's what happens in these playoff losses that the Saints have had. Is they come out firing, they come out hanging points, just like against the Vikings. They come out hanging points. They can't stop Drew Brees. They stopped letting Drew Brees throw. They go to a ball control. Now they're playing not to lose instead of playing to keep winning. Now all of a sudden Vikings catch back up because that's safe football. Drew Brees is cold, right? And he's basically handed the ball, and they said, okay, Drew, time to put on your cape and go win the game for us. And that's tough for any quarterback in any team, in any system to do. And so that's why I've got this one circled. I think it's big for Sean on both the coaches. I think it's big on Sean Payton. Am I going to let my star Hall of Fame quarterback continue to wheel and deal? And it's big for, even if the Bears end up winning or losing, it's big for Matt Nagy to sit there and say, how am I going to treat Nick Foles and get Nick Foles? Because what I'm doing right now is absolutely hot garbage. It's not working for my Bears right now. I mean, Are you seeing the same thing that from what I'm seeing, or do you disagree?
Well, a big way when Drew Brees is kind of in that, what you were mentioning, kind of like letting him dissect defense, the way the Vikings were really able to stop the Saints in that playoff game was they took their defensive ends and played them inside, because Brees is still a true pocket passer. He's not as mobile as he once was. So if you're able to push the pocket in his lap, because, I mean, the Saints have a pretty good O-line, but their strong points are their tackles. So rather than putting your two best pass rushers on their two best pass blockers, put them on the weaker guys in the middle. So they were also able to, because they had some depth last year at the edge position with, they put Griffin and Daniil Hunter in the middle. Then you'd have a Fadi Adenabo and I think Jalen Holmes. I don't remember who the other defensive end was. Oh no, it was Stephen Weatherly. And so you basically had four defensive ends out there, push the pocket in their face, and then they were able to also get some pressure from their edge rushers, which primarily from there. But as far as this year, I think that Smith and was it Marquez Callaway really stepped up for the Saints. And so, I mean, I think at the end of the day, until Sanders and Thomas are back, they're still going to have to lean heavily on Latavius Murray and Alvin Kamara, but both those guys, they're running backs. They can run the ball, but they can both catch the ball out of the backfield. Or you can line them up outside and get them mismatched on a linebacker, which is exactly what Sean Payton likes to do. And it's exactly what Drew Brees likes to do as well. And I think that, and Saints fans might not like this, I don't think they can have Taysom Hill on the field as much as they have been. Because I think, having a few gadget plays in the offense every week for Taysom Hill's a good idea, but if you're really rolling like down the field, just let Drew Brees finish the drive, because the quarterback's the leader of the huddle. You can't have kind of musical chairs at the quarterback position, and it's a little bit different than the 49ers situation with Steve Young and Joe Montana, because they didn't rotate him in throughout the game. I mean, they just went with the guy. Like, we're going with, Joe Montana this week or Steve Young the next week. A little bit different, but it's the same in the way that, one quarterback's the leader of that huddle, and right now it should be Drew Brees.
No, great point. Well, I think that's all the time we've got previewing games, going over things. If we missed anything or you guys saw anything different, feel free to let us know. Again, as always, this is Clayton from the East West Football Network, and with me is my good friend
Justin Pruschel.
We thank you guys for tuning in, and we hope you come back next week.
Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe.